We have 30 kids here. When you go into a public school, 30 kids may be the whole classroom, one class. And we found that academically, when they made the transition from grade 6 into a public school, they caught up very quickly.
Well, all my children went through this school, began in this school and completed the classes in this school, and are now attending schools in Canada as well as in the States. And when they went there, they were confident as to who they were, and they were even on the honor roll in the other schools, and they're holding their own, and there's no complaints at all. So it's successful if we measure it in those terms.
The tuition at the Freedom School is $500. Obtaining the money is a hardship for many Indian families, but parents manage to raise between 30 and 40% of the school's budget. The rest comes from grants and private donations, since there are no state or federal funds going to the school.
The parents have to be very, very dedicated. They have to really believe that this is what they want for their children, that they want their children to come to school to learn about who they are, their language, and to continue that.
While the Freedom School has complete independence from any authority outside the reservation, the St. Regis Mohawk School is part of the Salmon River School District and subject to New York State requirements. On the Canadian side of the reservation, the situation is entirely different. There, the Board of Education is made up entirely of people from the community who are elected locally. The board controls 3 schools on the Canadian side and has operated independently from the Canadian government since 1987. Like the Freedom School, each day begins with the Thanksgiving. The public schools on the Canadian side of the reservation teach about 430 children. They have a much more intensive Mohawk program than the public school on the American side. From pre-K through first grade, the children are taught for a half day in Mohawk and then a half day in English. After that, students are required to take a 45-minute class in Mohawk each day through the 8th grade. Marcia Peters teaches in one of the schools on the Canadian side. She uses games like Simon Says to teach the children Mohawk. In comparing the different schools that we've looked at, it's clear that each system has its own way of doing things. Minerva White doesn't see a problem with that. After her involvement locally, she became the coordinator for the Native American program in the New York State Education Department.
Wouldn't it be better for the Mohawks to be able to centralize the whole educational system on the reservation, rather than have it split up between 2 countries?
Well, that's a very difficult question to answer because of the fact that you have 2 countries, 2 provinces, and a state. I am not as negative as you seem to be, I'm more upbeat because I've seen such tremendous growth. And I really think that those folks on the American side who are having getting their children educated within the St. Regis Mohawk School, at this point in time are getting the kind of education that they want for their children. Okay? You can talk about time spans of teaching Mohawk, you can talk about all of these kinds of things. The fact is that it is being taught and that the culture is also being taught. And you looked at one very small segment of it. It's also carried through, right up straight through to the Salmon River Central School, where on the American side, it is used as the Regent's requirement for the foreign language. So you then are looking at kindergarten right straight through to grade 12. It is also offered at the adult level, at the college level for the adults. I don't know if you looked into that program. We have several colleges coming to the reservation to teach, and within the modern day program you can take the Mohawk language.
So you don't see a problem with the lack of cohesion?
I don't see a problem with the lack of cohesion because I don't really know what you mean when you say cohesion. What do you mean?
Well, you have...
We do have effort going on right now between a person at the Salmon River School and on the Canadian side, where they are trying to get together to develop a more cohesive plan for the language for the total reservation. I don't really think that you need to have one school to do that. I think you need to get a group of interested teachers working together to develop a cohesive language and cultural program for whatever school.
In spite of the differences that now exist between the schools on the reservation, the Mohawk language is being taught more intensively than it was in the past. The education policies in both Canada and the United States used to be aimed at assimilating Native Americans.
What happened in the past to Mohawk children when they were in school?
Well, from what we understand from people within our community, when children were speaking the native language, when they were children speaking the native language, they were punished, physically punished, for speaking Mohawk in the schools. And I believe this is probably having something to do with the assimilation policies that went through the United States and Canada, where they wanted to mainstream the native children at that particular time. And so therefore they didn't want anything that had anything with Mohawk culture in the school system at all. So they downplayed it very much so that the students would forget their native language and their native ideas and beliefs and so on.
They were actually forbidden to speak their language?
They were actually forbidden, very much so, very much so.
What about your own experience?
I remember, I guess in my own experiences, it never being a positive type of a reward to say that you could speak the native language. I remember in school, and my aunt had taught me how to read and write in Mohawk, and I was so proud of this, and I was writing a couple of words on a piece of paper and took it to school and showed it to one of my teachers. And I distinctly remember him saying, "Why do you need to learn this? You don't need to learn this. You need to learn how to speak English, and you need to learn how to write English. You don't really need to learn this stuff." And I felt very bad about that, and I was very positive of wanting to share that. And I just kept those kinds of things to myself.
Why is it important for Mohawk children to learn their language?
Because this is the only thing I feel that we have in modern times to show our identity as Native people. If you lose your language, you lose everything. Because when we speak in our language, our culture, our history, everything is all there. We're not a people who write things down in books and so on. Our traditions are passed orally. So if you want to understand who you are as a person, you need to sit down and understand the oral history of our people and the oral traditions that have come forth. And if you don't have this, you have no link with the people who've come before. And it's very, very important that you speak your native language so that you as a person inside know who you are to deal with the other people in the world. And that's, I think for me, that's why it's very important. And I think that it's extremely important for Native people to keep our language, to pass it into this next generation, because this is the only thing that makes us uniquely Mohawk.